Rise and shine. You're listening to Z on Radio Ramadan on 87.7 FM. You may call me on 0116 482 2086, or you can call us or WhatsApp us. It's up to you. If you want to WhatsApp us, it's 077 488 Right. Whoever's going to call me first, I'm going to have to give him a gift voucher. So if you're listening in right now and you want a gift voucher, then call me. It will be a foodie gift voucher, which will come in useful when you go out to do a bit of shopping. So if you're awake, then rise and shine. If you're not awake, then somebody who is awake, you can wake you up and do a little bit of active listening today on Radio Ramadan. We have quite a lot going on today. We have at 11 o'clock, Dr. Shahid Latif is going to come along with his guest and talk to us about some very good medical issues. Most probably last week we did a good session with him on, I think it was on diabetes. Yes, in fact, diabetes has been, we've done about 3 sessions this month. It's been very, very useful. Certainly, a lot of you will understand that high sugars is a huge problem in our society. Almost 6 to 8 people are suffering from diabetes out of 10. So that's a very high figure. You may be walking around with diabetes and you won't even know it that you have diabetes. So all of you, please pay attention. Every single program here, there is a lot of things going on. So how are you this morning? If all is good, let me know. My guest is just telling me that he hasn't received a Zoom link, so Zainab, our producer, has to do some action there, probably send it to him by WhatsApp because he's not receiving it, or send him the passcode and send him the ID, and he can link up on from the WhatsApp. So sometimes you're using technology, sending an email, but the email's not reaching the recipient, and then they call you back and tell you. So this is live radio, and everything goes on here. Yesterday I walked into the studio, and one of the group, they said to me, oh, I went on and I couldn't see, and they were communicating with sign language and I didn't understand what they were saying. Of course, you have to learn these signals in the studio. We're only here for a month and we've developed some code of conduct, and we get it done. So if you're new here and you don't know, then before you go in, we're going to have to give you a little bit of a training. So what's happening? A lot of things happening. We're focusing a lot on community partnerships. Next week, Monday onwards, that is tomorrow, we'll be starting our week discussing EDI. And EDI, we're looking to work hard to put the D back into diversity and focus on that, inclusion, and everything associated with EDI. So next week, be ready. A lot of things we're going to learn, going to meet some good guests and work on good issues that will help develop our community. So here, we're encouraging everybody to become a CDI. A CDI is a Community Development Officer. So what I want you to do right now, if you're listening, is put your right hand up if you want to be a CDI. If you want to be a CDI, Community Development Officer, or a CDO, Inspector, Officer, whichever way you want it to be. If you want to be a CDI, you'll be a Community Development Inspector. If you're a CDO, you'll be a Community Development Officer. And that's what we want to do. We want everybody to get involved, everybody to take part. We need to work hard to develop a community which will be for the future, for our children, our grandchildren. It's very important we do that. Of course, right now, we are totally clouded with what's happening with the pandemic, and we've just come out of the pandemic, and straight away, we've jumped into a war. So my producer will confirm to me if our guest is on now. Is he on? So have you sent him the link? Yeah? So give him a call, please, and chase him up so we can move on. So this is what happens in the studio. Some studios around the country, there is no producer. You come, you sit on your deck, and you're on your own. If you have a problem, then you got a problem. Here, the advantage of having a producer is any problems, techie problems, they're taking care of them and dealing with them. So that's what's happening. It's very important that we get support. Now, all of you listening in right now, the parents, I want you to put your phone away and listen. Now, I want your kids, I want them to start getting involved with community groups, community charities in the city. I want them to start at an early age, as early as 7, 8 is good enough, and get them to be interactive and get them into move those muscles, get into some sports and get them involved, because these community engagements are absolutely important, because if they start early and you put them in good organizations, they will be much better for it. That early foundation is so crucial. If you mollycoddle them at home and they don't get engagement, they're not going to fit well in, and they'll catch a wrong crowd, and then they'll be on a downward sliding scale. This is very important. All of you mummies and daddies listening right now, your children, your grandchildren, you got to set good foundations for them, and nothing better than community engagement, community organizations, charity groups. Start engaging your children there. Just going to school or afterwards going to madrasa is not the end. This is very important. Now, we have a community in the city here which is over nearly 70 diversities, and we must learn about each other. Then only we are going to move forward. No one else is going to do this for you. You've got to do it yourselves. All you parents listening in right now, you need to become absolutely involved and interactive with what I'm explaining to you right now. If you have any issues and you don't understand, do call us and we will try to signpost you. And we need to work to the strengths of our children. Our grassroots, normally grassroots, they refer to our younger generations, so they can start early. So you give them good nasiyah, which means advice, and guide them, and they can come forward, right? So we have a link with our guest yet? My producer is telling me. Yes, our guest is on, Brother Hussein Mehdi. Can you hear me?
I can hear very well, Said. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, you need to speak up, because you were on last a couple of weeks back, and we had about 1 million people call in to say that they could not hear you very well. Well, 1 million. Maybe I'm a few zeros out.
You hear me better now? Do I have to shout louder?
Yes, that's much better. Brother Hussein, we were talking about, now we come out of this pandemic. We're not fully out of it yet, because it is here with us for some time. So they estimate that pandemic to be over takes up to 5 years, and we're 2 years down the line.
Wow, this must be like the only pandemic this lasted so long. I don't remember this in my life history. Do you remember another one?
Well,
like it?
I wasn't born 1918 when the last one, the plague happened. The Spanish flu. So that was 1918. I wasn't around there. I'm sorry about that, Brother Hussein. I feel as though I've let you down.
Well, it'd be interesting to find out how long that one lasted.
Yeah. Well, they say, we have to follow the science. They're saying that takes some years, at least another 3 more years. So we have to be always mindful.
Follow the science.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. You say that. Follow the science. I was just reading an article. Actually, the article was presented on a podcast of somebody who has about 5.5 million followers, and probably like the media would like to think about him as a conspiracy theorist. But anyway, it was written in the Wall Street Journal, and it was about the FDA approving a 4th dose against the advice of its experts. So if the FDA is ignoring their experts and then the CDC follows on, this is in America, approving the 4th jab, what does follow the science actually mean? I'm beginning to have my doubts about this follow the science statement that we're told.
Well, there's a question mark there, so I'm going to suggest everyone to do their own research here. We are not qualified to tell anybody, do this, do that, do the other, right? You do your own
I'm
research
just, yeah, of course.
and
I'm
you
just
follow that.
relaying what I
Yeah.
read in the Wall
And
Street Journal.
of course, everyone will share what they've read, and sometimes you're often led by the media, more so than any time in these kind of prevalent times. But 2 years climbing back from a pandemic, and then we're encircled with a new sheriff in town, which is affecting everybody globally, which is the war in Ukraine. Of course,
Yeah, very sad, very sad.
I
It seems
still
to go
I
from
still
crisis
haven't
to
recovered
crisis.
from the war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Yemen, in Palestine, in where else is there? Syria. These are all war-torn areas, and of course, there's a war going on in Mali. In
What about the war in Yemen, Zed?
yeah,
Also,
yeah,
let's forget
mention
that.
that war as well. Now,
6 years.
people listening in right now, you probably won't remember, or you have not been told that there's a war going on in Iraq that started many years ago, and 1 million people have died from that war, and 500,000 children are the after effects of that war, who are suffering from many afflictions, medical afflictions, due to the war. So,
Oh, you mean like the 500,000 children who died during the 10 year of
yeah,
economic
yeah,
sanctions,
and
in which Madeleine Albright was questioned about, was it justified? Was it worthwhile? And she said yes.
so as we talk about the war in Ukraine, and we forget about the last 10 or 20 years of wars that have been taking place. So all of you guys who are born in the 90s, you will probably be about 10 years old when most of these wars started, from the year 2000 onwards, right up to 2022 today. Now, in my book, the book of Zed, the word war,
Like that.
W-A-R, should be eradicated completely, right? This word should not exist in 2022. We are living now in a digital world where we are globally connected, and it makes absolute no sense to be warring away purely based on one man's vision, another
But Zed, what's
man's.
special about 2022 that there should be no wars in 2022? Because we're living in 2022, but it was okay to have wars, in 1980 or in 1962 or some other date.
But
What's special about
my dear
2022?
brother, we're in the month of Ramadan, right? When we spiritually detoxify ourselves and we mentally enhance our thinking, and we get closer to the Creator, 1/3 of our body is reserved there for our spirituality, that we have to fuel it every day with goodness. We can't do that when people are dying across the globe with war here,
course.
war there, war everywhere. There's a war here, there's a
I
war
share
there.
your sentiments, of course.
And this is where mindsets have to change, that these wars, because we are now globally connected, we cannot allow the propaganda that comes along with the war to fuel our mindsets. And this is a big problem across the globe, that then after the propaganda, we have to then deal with the hypocrisy and the double standards. You almost know what's going to happen next from past experience, right? So,
Financial crisis.
of course, you have financial crisis, you have food crisis, then added to
Now
that,
we
you
have-
have social disorder, because once you have food crisis, people can't buy food, they're going to go steal food. You have social disorder, and you keep the whole engine ticking away, right? And you forget about prevention, because you are spending all your time in the mode of being the one to cure. So the word cure has only 4 letters, but it is keeping us all busy. Whereas the word prevention is too many letters, and we are not successful at creating a preventive environment, right? Because all throughout the month we've been talking about our communities, how we're going to develop them, how we're going to coexist and integrate like we've never done so before. Brother Hussein, how many diversities do you know in your area where you live?
Oh, wow. We are diverse. I was at Dewsbury Hospital a few months back, And I was asking someone there in reception, and I noticed that her accent was Eastern European. So I said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "I'm from Russia." I thought, no way. In Dewsbury, somebody from Russia working as a receptionist in Dewsbury Hospital. I said, "How many of you is there in Dewsbury?" She said, "Maybe 2 or 3. So I never thought that somebody from Russia is living in my area. So probably there's going to be more diversity than I would imagine or be prepared to put a guess on it. But I think, I mean, because I was in Tesco yesterday and I saw this kefir, like this Polish thing. So we have a Polish community. We have obviously the from the originally Indian subcontinent community, diverse city there, from the Arab world. I mean, I'd say probably at least 50. And we're just a small area. I mean, it's a very small town. It's Dewsbury and Kirklees in general. Maybe even more than 50.
So in the scheme of things, when you compare, in the UK, our population is about 66,242,000 people, approximately. If somebody would like to check that and confirm that, we can update our data here. So right now, as we speak, I'm hoping that one of you is on the Google checking that stat out for me. And of course, whoever gets that right is going to get a little gift from me. And I'm going to...
We're allowed to approximate, round down.
Well, look, if you get desperate, you can go on Google and check, right? Everybody does it, so you can do it as well. I'll let you off, and you can check on Google. So, of course, with this many diversities, we need to really educate all of us collectively with our mindsets. Because when you have all these diversities, they don't fully understand how to integrate, and mindsets have to be absolutely, you have to work on that. It ain't going to happen overnight. And the only way it's going to happen is engagement with each other. Otherwise...
I think the natural course for people is not to be unfriendly to each other when they meet people. Because, I mean, you can't assume things about people when you meet them first time. You can't assume that they're different from you. So, okay, they may look different. They may wear different types of clothing, but you start with assuming that they're like you. So, and you open up a general conversation. I mean, this Easter weekend, I've been doing some gardening, and because it's beautiful weather, and I see people walking down the streets as I'm doing the gardening, laboring away, during Ramadan, 5 hours in the garden, sweating away. And they stop and they talk to me and they say hello, and, and we chat. And it's the weather opens up the hearts of people to be nice to each other.
Of course.
So maybe we need more good weather to help this positive engagement between people.
It helps immensely. The power of sunshine, it fuels positive energy in the body, for sure. Now, when we are fueled with negative energy, what's going to happen is there's going to be other people around us who are also with negative energy, and you're going to natter with them, and your negative energy is going to get worse. Now, with the negative energy, the brain is going to be manufacturing negative thoughts. Those thoughts are going to convert into your emotions, and those emotions are then going to convert into your verbal speech, text, or whatever. And then that is where you're going to be in trouble. So this is the power of the brain, Brother Hussein. So
the power of the brain or the power of the mind. So it's amazing. It's a complex topic.
Of course, now when we have such a creation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, which is infinite. It can go from a KB to an MB to a GB to a TB to...
Can I just stop you there for a second? You lost me, please, with all these acronyms. Please,
Okay, now
if I don't understand it, and
we live in a world of computing now,
your listeners can't be understanding this. So please,
Today,
decoded.
Brother Hussein, a 3-year-old today is proficient on an iPad. So we live in the world of computing where everything is measured with our
The
KB.
KBs. Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
that's KBs and MBs and yes, gig GBs.
Yeah,
Yes,
and then this is the power of the brain.
and TBs.
Yeah,
Did you mention TBs?
a terabyte. Yeah, so the brain can switch
Yeah,
over so fast.
that's my field of expertise, and I lost you.
Of course, it is Sunday morning, and you are not as active as I am, and you're not as positively fueled with energy as I am. So all of you listening in right now, you get the drift, Brother Hussein. The power of the brain is infinite. So what I'm trying to explain to you all is that in the year 2022, if we don't learn about ourselves, our capabilities, our positive energy, our negative energy, we're not going to come to understand how we can make a better society. And the war, the impact it has, it's at our doorstep, it's in Europe, and the food crises are followed by the fuel crisis, right? So,
But Zed, can I just interject here? I mean, most of us are not really. We're just like we are just being influenced by these events. We're not actually causing these events. We're not the ones who are deciding, when to go to war, when to do economic sanctions, when to do this or that. We're just passive recipients of the actions of other people higher up in the hierarchy of decision making. So maybe you should be talking to them, interviewing them, and tell them, we need to have this peace. Why is this war going on?
of course,
How can we resolve these things by, as Churchill said, Joe, not war.
of course, now again, 2 years climbing from this pandemic, and we're encircled with this global issue going on right now in the Ukraine, and which later on I would like to also remind people that we have this other issue where one of our listeners came along, and not our listeners, one of our guests, he came along and he says, it's a dead cat on the table. Of course, I don't know what that means. What's a dead cat on the table? He says, always our parliamentarians will throw a dead cat on the table and the media will pick up on it and all attention is diverted, right? So we went from the Ukraine, we jumped to Rwanda. Now,
all right, yes.
Now point your hand up if you even know where is Rwanda. It's spelled Rwanda.
That's where the good coffee comes from. Maybe they want, these refugees, before they come to the UK, to go over to Rwanda to sample the good coffee.
Well, you've lost me there because I'm completely blown off track with that one. So you want the refugees to go there and learn how to process and pack coffee.
That's what they're wanting.
So
those decision makers, it's interesting.
So you are saying that. Do you think that somebody in government has looking to send these refugees to Rwanda to get involved in the coffee industry?
Possibly, so that they can be entrepreneurs and bring coffee trade into the UK. After their refugee status is positively sorted out. Maybe that's what's on their mind,
Well, I tell you.
I think the politicians are forward thinking like this.
Yes, so all these politicians who made these decisions, now one of the messages I've had, it says, how does this all come about, this idea? Well, from my past experiences and being in a neighboring country to Rwanda, what happens is an envoy. What's an envoy? Envoy is a front man for the government. He catches a plane, he flies out there to this country and that country. So in this case, being Uganda and Rwanda, and he goes and does some wheeling and dealing there. And he then comes back to the government and he says, yes, I've got a deal. And the whole process starts. And then the government said, right, this is a great idea. If we send them all over to Rwanda, who have agreed to take them on, and then we'll save a lot of money. We'll solve our problem. But then...
even Nigel Farage doesn't buy this one.
Well, I don't know about... any comments from him on this?
Yeah. He was interviewed by the BBC, and he said, "This is going to backfire. One bad report, and this is going to backfire on the government." He's against it.
Of course, there is a human rights issue here as well, isn't there?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the issue of how different people are treated differently. The UK government, and this is like very, very interesting, is motivated British citizens to open their hearts and their doors to Ukrainian refugees. Up to 200,000 people have expressed interest now, but only a handful have maybe come over. The government is doing so many good deeds, but only after almost 2 months of war, only a handful have managed to come into the UK. So I don't know if it's a propaganda exercise, I'm a little bit cynical. But in any case, to encourage people. We have no issue with debt. We have no issue with financial resources. We have no issue with capacity for schools or nurseries or whatever, because a lot of them have children as well. So they can come, but people of color have to go to Rwanda first and stay there until their case is heard.
Of course, we are now talking about the 4 C's again, right? The 4 C's should not be used to determine what to do next, right? Of course, Brother Hussein, are you familiar with the 4 C's?
Yes, the creed, the color, the what else?
It's the caste, color, creed, culture, right?
Culture, yes.
And then this is...
But they're discriminating not only, in terms of color, but in terms of gender. It's only the males that go there, But I think also single women will be going there. So there's like gender discrimination in the policy as well.
Now,
so you need to add that to your
if you read the small print, it says, we're only sending the illegal boat refugees over there, right? And
how can you know that?
So they're not looking to send the Ukrainian refugees to Rwanda. Now,
okay.
Now, can you see the disparity? Yes?
Well, there's a lot of people who see it. How many people talk about it?
Yeah. So we have always the H&D happening all the time, the hypocrisy and the double standards, it's going on all the time in history. It's never going to stop.
But I don't, sometimes I don't think that this is about discrimination based on race. I think this is more about geopolitics. The fact that they've opened or encouraging people to open their doors and to give people money to receive refugees. This is I think it's more about geopolitics of the particular situation with Ukraine and Russia, rather than a general kind of like policy on discrimination because they're European, because they're white, because they're, blue-eyed, blonde. That's why we're allowing them in. And that's why, the others of color will have to send them to Rwanda and process their applications before they come. No, I don't think it's an exercise of this kind. I think the Ukrainian exercise is more about geopolitics. It's a big chess game. If you play chess like me, Zed, you know that what you're interested in a chess game is checkmate. And all the other strategies that you build in the game is about reaching the end goal. So there's a big picture going on. I don't quite fully understand it yet. I've tried to understand it. I've read the book by Henry Kissinger on world order, published in 2014, to try and understand. He mentions 2 things, balance in power and the international world order. And I think the Ukraine situation, Russia situation is about that, balance of power and international world order. So, but what is the project? I mean, a lot of people have said that this Ukraine situation could have been averted quite easily by the US guaranteeing Russia Ukraine will not be part of NATO. End of story.
Of course, we always been saying on the radio throughout the month, your knowledge is your power. Your knowledge leads to your education. Your education will create your wisdom. And you have the greatest minds in the world like Noam Chomsky, and they are full of wisdom. You listen to only peace you can hear from them. When they talk, they have words of wisdom. Everything they say is there for unity of humanity, not war. But these great minds are not listened to. So this is very sad. The best of
the
minds.
reason why these great intellectuals are not listened to, or that the media tries to influence us to think in certain direction. We seem to be like zombies. We follow the media from one crisis to another, and we just seem to take on the narrative which is given to us. So they want to take us north. Yeah, they tell us a story that encourages us to go north, and the whole media kind of like, it's a big machine that sort of like starts engaging with us, and we follow. We go north. They want us to go south. We go south.
Of course.
And one wonders, like, I mean, is it like, do these crises happen just like that? Out of their own? They have a momentum of their own, and what about what we are doing? Are we not engaged in activity which is making these crises, come to the surface? But the media doesn't tell us that we should question authority. We should follow authority.
Now, what makes me sad is today the world is driven by social media. So when you see that you can change mindsets, you can influence, there are so many people out there that have got followings, 5 million, 10 million, 100 million. Why, on the other hand, we create more fuel to the fire by spending $500 million and fueling the war? We add fuel to a problem instead of finding a cure for it and preventing it to happen with solid dialogue. And it makes me sad.
I think what should happen to stop this whole nonsense about Ukraine and Russia is for Joe Biden to get on his presidential plane and fly to Moscow, sit down with Putin, sign a piece of paper, and the war will stop overnight. And people do not need to suffer anymore.
Okay,
will Joe Biden do this?
What is this?
Can you call him and find out whether he's going to?
Yeah. I'll call him after the show. I'll give him a call, Brother Hussein. Please
just remind him, in case he forgets, that his plane is called US-1. Just tell him, don't go on board US-2. It's US-1.
So we have seen there an example of Brother Hussein. He's gone from a KB to an MB. This is the power of the brain. So he's come up with good idea, right?
Zed, I thought you'd at least take me up to GB, please.
You're heading that way. So what we're saying is, look, how does all these issues affect us right now in our city where we live? The food crises are not only affecting us where everything is gone up. I had a message here that we have got oil has gone up. Now oil everybody uses to do a fry up. It was 29 pounds. Now it's gone to 43 pounds, which is that big.
What's this, cooking oil?
Yeah, the cooking oil, which is the 25-liter can. So
not only cooking oil, tomatoes has gone up from 4 pounds to 24 pounds. My brother-in-law is in the restaurant business, and he's told me, like, it's gone up from 4 to 24. A box of tomatoes. So can you imagine?
Now, if you stop using tomatoes and you stop using oil,
what do we eat?
Well, we've got eggs, haven't we?
Even the chickens are refusing to lay eggs unless you pay them more.
So this is a problem now. We have a huge problem. So everything's gone up. The food crisis, we are feeling the pinch here in England with the food crisis. Now, when you have food crisis, you have other social disorders to follow. It affects everybody, indeed. And when the food crisis happen, people change their buying power, reduces, and
people here in this country said, I mean, this country is rich,
Of
but
course,
we should be
but
worrying about people in
okay,
Bangladesh,
I'm
in
coming to that now.
Pakistan.
This war, it's leading up to the end of the year. 3 billion sufferers you will produce. They'll die of hunger or they will experience hunger. Many will die of hunger. Many will experience hunger. 3 billion. Now, Brother Hussein, what is the population of the world?
Oh, I think it's nearing 8 billion. So that's like almost a third, more than a third. Zed. That's where do you get this statistics from? Because this is quite grave. 3 billion to be affected by hunger. I'm hoping that they would not be starving.
Of course, add to that, there'll be the fuel crisis as well. As the world sits and watches, looking left and right, contradictions and double standards, forgetting.
Especially when Saudi and UAE, they're refusing to increase their oil output. I don't know how they're managing to
So as we progress,
where's Trump? We need Trump now to say, King, pump more oil. I think Trump needs to be president of the US again, to call the king and tell him, King, pump more oil.
Is that what he said to him?
Well, he said to him, King, you're dependent on us, 2 weeks. If we withdraw our support, you won't last for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So what's Sleepy Joe doing? We need Trump to be the president
of the
United States, so he can pick up the phone and tell the king, pump more oil.
We're in a small city in England known for its championship of the Premier League in 2015. So we have no bearing on this, what happens in the USA or Ukraine. But for those of you who just listening in don't know what we're talking about food crisis, we're talking about the fuel shortages, we're talking about how all these things are going to affect us here in England right now, and what the after effects are for all of us in the country. So it is a concerning matter to us, but then we also are not forgetting the war crimes that have been taking place in Syria, in Libya, in South Yemen, and throughout the world. And Ukraine seems to be right now the flavor that everybody.
Did I tell you what the UNICEF are like? Trying to get donations from people in the UK. So they have this advert on saying that there's about I think they mentioned 3 million children starving in Yemen. Yeah, and this war has been going on for 6 years. Yeah, I mean, you don't hear about it much in the media.
That is a long time.
This could be easily stopped. It's a devastation.
Of course, right now, with the advent of social media, the whole world is absolutely frustrated with what they are fed with this propaganda. Throughout the world, it's happening, and regime change is taking place. Syria is gone. The Pakistan just went last week.
No, they did not manage.
No, not Syria. I made a mistake there. Apologies for that. The Sri Lanka, I was talking about regime change happened there, regime change happened in Pakistan, and so on. So frustration.
And the next actually is going to be India and Russia. They want regime change in Russia.
Right. What's happening in India and Russia and Germany? Germany cannot afford not to buy their fuel, and Japan cannot afford to not buy the liquid gas and crude oil from Russia. And the sanctions are not playing out very well because they need this for their own country. India, for example, last week told America that, well, he didn't exactly say it like that, but I'm saying it my way. He said that, no, you should more worry about Europe, because Europe is using in one afternoon the fuel that we are buying from Russia, which is for a month. So that was quite a shocker that America was putting pressure on India to not buy anything from Russia. And
that tells you, actually, that kind of like helps my scenario a little bit with the big chess game. I think this whole thing is about China. This is my personal analysis. The US does not want China to be number one. And China is naturally heading that way. So this whole crisis is putting pressure on China. So how you put pressure on China? You got to control China through its boundaries, Russia, India, the Pacific. I have a feeling that I suspect this is all about China.
Well, it's more than that. We've just had a message from one of our listeners saying that the war in Ukraine will not stop while Russia thinks that USA and NATO is encroaching their borders via their proxies. So this is how everything is played out. There are countries in the world, you have to side with the West, you have to side with them, you have to side with whoever you side with is just the way it's going on at the moment. So all economies today are integrated, and there's an issue of social toxicity everywhere in the world. So
there was a friend of mine, he's not a friend, but he's a trader I met in Dubai, and he sells dates. Yeah, they have farms in one North African country, and they sell dates. As soon as the crisis with Russia happened, all the vessels that were heading to Russian ports could not get there. I think it was due to insurance policies. They could not insure the goods. So he had 7 containers of dates heading to Russia to one of his customers. It was Ramadan, coming to Ramadan, and people want to buy dates for Ramadan in Russia. 7 containers. He said, I had to struggle. I needed to reroute these because I could not get them to the port. And I had to give a discount of $200 a ton to one of my customers in Europe to take those 7 containers. So that, imagine 7 times, say it's about 20 tons, that's 140 tons of goods times 200. This guy lost, it's eaten out of his profit margin. He's probably giving it away at a bit of a loss. It can't be, there's right. Not so much.
So I'm going to go back to our listeners now, just to remind you all that things are happening in one part of the world affect us here where we are living right here. The crisis filter through all around, they encircle the world. We must not get complacent and think, oh, we're all right, Jack. It doesn't work like that. So we are in the month of Ramadan, and hunger across the world, we feel the pain. So this is the message in the month of Ramadan, that we all have to see what we can do to work together. We can only do what we can to alleviate poverty. So all of you people who are contributing your donations to all the wonderful charities who join with us on Saturdays and Sundays, that is absolutely wonderful. Brother Hussein, time has gone up extremely fast while we've been talking about important issues. So,
do I have time for 30 seconds to reflect on Ramadan?
You have to do a quick Ramadan message to everyone because we have 30 seconds only.
Okay, well, in Ramadan, you see, we're supposed to contemplate about the Quran. So this is quite interesting. I'll give my 2 pence in it. And I remember a conversation in the Quran between God and his angels when he tells them that I'm going to put my representative on this earth. And they say, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to put somebody on it who's going to cause corruption and shed blood?
My brother, we have to cut you now. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.